Going to repeat it again, just in case. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat, pop them in the Q&A. If not, I am going to start turning cameras on and sort of asking people to put their hands up. And there we go. So Q&As are starting to come in already. There we go. So someone, Rommie, someone's asked about post-incident debriefing for the team. Any useful models to use?
Yeah, and that's not a set part of this program, but I love to share because I love debriefing from any size incident. I'm a big fan of the modified plus delta method. And it's really 4 simple steps. Number 1, I know it sounds perhaps a little bit touchy-feely, but you ask how everyone felt about the incident, whether it was potentially traumatic or even not. And that works for testing, that works for real incidents. We sort of got to get the emotions out there and defuse that a little bit. You don't necessarily have to comment on them or make things better. You got to let people express the emotions, because there's not going to be any learning that's going to happen until after those get out there. And then we focus on, and this is the teaching part of it. This isn't so much critical incident stress debriefing or debriefing just to de-escalate the emotions. This is more let's break down in lessons learned. So the plus delta part of it, we do our emotions. Then the plus is the positives. What things are lessons learned that we would absolutely love to do again? We want everybody to do it this way. Once we get through, we want to start on the positive, because we want to everybody tries to focus on the negatives. We want to begin with what we're going to do again and spread the word on that. Then the delta is our sign for change. So we're going to then focus not on the things that went wrong, because again, everybody wants to focus on, what was wrong or blame. There's a good amount of that in a lot of incidents or even just training scenarios. But the delta is, what are we going to do differently next time? What do we need to tweak, and how do we need to tweak it? It's got a much more practical spin the way that we phrase it that way. And the 4th step and final step is our takeaways. So what are our big takeaways from this? And I, if I'm able to, like to literally go person to person and say, hey, what's your big takeaway from our debrief today? And that not only helps people really lock in those key lessons, but if maybe they misunderstood something, or they're taking away a lesson, excuse me, but it's not a key lesson, it's not a priority, this is our last chance to sort of tweak that. If we're talking about debriefing for resilience and emotional support, that's really a whole separate thing. And if we're going to do that, I guess the one comment I would make is, if that's our primary goal, then we're not looking at trying to learn from the incident at that point. Plus delta won't be useful for that. We need to let people just be able to express their feelings and make sure that we're offering them support and putting them, if necessary, in a support channel that's going to get them the mental support resources they need.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I knew it would, but I'm so glad that we started with the Q&A section tonight as well, because people are coming in with questions. So if there's a question that's going to be answered during the presentation, feel free to sort of say, you know what, this is going to be answered during, so we're going to move on from this. However, questions are really starting to roll in. So the reason we've done this, guys, is because we realize that stuff might be not covered. And obviously, Captain Duckworth is from the USA, and does have a lot of experience in the UK. So he definitely knows what he's talking about, so do not worry. But we just wanted to make sure that we're covering everything tonight, even from what Captain Duckworth is going to talk about in the presentation to the Q&A at the end that's going to be related to the presentation. So we're just making sure that any burning questions that you might have are answered first. So moving on from that, Helen Hamill has asked, can I ask your thoughts on maximum time to a regional major trauma centre? So essentially, I think that is, how long should you take? What's the minimum amount of time that should be spent on getting to a major trauma centre?
I would have to say, you want to follow, excuse me, you're going to want to follow and I don't know the UK guidelines off the top of my head. I'm actually working with American College of Surgeons and the American Heart Association to revise our traumatic cardiac arrest guidelines for the US. And for us, if you're talking penetrating trauma, primarily penetrating trauma, it's going to be 15 minutes, and blunt trauma, 10 minutes, if it's going to be survival for any major traumatic injuries. I hope that helps, but again, I don't want to step on UK specific guidelines because that's a part that I'm not completely familiar with.
No, but I think even that, just your ideas of how long it should take for the different scenarios absolutely matters, because that's something that people can have in their heads. If they're not, they should be familiar, but if they're not, that's something to have. Now, this is a question that might come up in your presentation because I know you know about TST. However, I'm going to ask it anyway, just in case. So, Rois, I'm sorry for pronouncing your name wrong. Lorenz has asked, how would TST have helped in the incidents you are going to talk about tonight?
Well, I will focus on that as we go through, but our primary goal, with safety, of course, in mind, our primary goal for boots on the ground mass casualty incidents, when we're setting our priorities, which is what this whole program is about, is forward movement of patients. That's what we have to maintain when we look at any major incidents and even minor motor vehicle collisions that you might have. Forward movement of patients is what it's all about, and TST helps that tremendously. In fact, I'm currently trying to get TST adopted, at least here in our state in Connecticut, because we're still using start and jump start and what I consider outdated triage methods that are simply not practical for them to be universal. TST is so simple, so practical that it helps. With a little bit of training, you can achieve a tremendous amount of not only competence from providers, but confidence. And confidence is what providers need to rapidly move from patient to patient at any level mass casualty incident, not only sorting and providing that triage, but providing the rapid intervention care that's needed with first contact and continuing to move on. So it's not just providing that care that TST helps with to maintain forward movement of patients because we have rapid triage, but it also means that we stay focused on providing that first contact life-saving interventions without getting bogged down in one individual patient. It's a mass casualty incident. We may stumble across the most injured patient as the first patient we encounter, but we can't stop there, or we risk leaving all of the other patients or many other patients that could be saved without any care, just for this one patient.
Perfect. So I didn't realize questions were going to go this mad straight away, but we're already up to about 10 questions straight off. So I think this question, I think, is going to be answered during the presentation. So I'm going to say it, and if it is going to, I'd just say just move on, and then we can address it actually in the presentation. So the question is from anonymous attendee: at what stage would you declare a major incident, and what steps would you take on the assessment? I feel like this is going to be covered, but correct me if I'm wrong.
It is, and I'm going to mention methane, and honestly, the way that I teach that version for our providers in the US. And I'm certainly not the only person who teaches mass casualty incidents. I don't want to give that impression. But when I teach it, I teach sort of a scaled down version of methane for providers who are not going to be sort of steeped in that training like a lot of the attendees here are. I want to methane, or whatever version that you use to declare the mass casualty incident, is crucial, not only because you're providing those crucial points of information that's going to be needed for people to coordinate care, but in my mind, the most important part about declaring, giving your methane report, starting with specifically declaring a mass casualty incident, is that people inbound, responders, firefighters, law enforcement, anybody, will immediately know, okay, the rules are a little bit different for this incident. We are in a different mode. We are in a mass casualty mode, and they have to come into the incident with that mind shift to avoid some of the issues that we see happening over and over and over again with real incidents and our after action reports, like we got with the 9/11 Commission report, with the 7/7 report, with the Manchester Arena bombing report, that we just see the same things happening over and over again. So for me, that's absolutely crucial and one of the priorities that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, perfect. And Catherine, just to answer your question, sorry, it's TST. It's probably my Lancashire accent is massively coming out. So the 10-second triage is what we're talking about, not TSD. That's just my Lancashire accent, probably really taking over things. So yeah, so we've got a lot of questions coming in all about sort of pre-hospital CPR and Stop the Bleed campaign, who to go for first on scene, and all these kind of things, especially in relation to TST. And now, as you see, we've got a lot of questions really coming in. So I'm going to leave it up to you. So I'm going to leave these questions open. And what we're going to do is, just so we can get into the actual presentation so you guys can see what's going on. I'm glad that everyone's engaged. I am really happy to see it. I've never had questions come in this quick before in my life. And I think it's now going to be a thing where I get people to ask questions before we even start things, so we can hopefully answer them during. However, just so we can actually get to what we're here for, which is to listen to Captain Duckworth talk, I'm going to carry on with tonight's intro, and then I'm absolutely going to hand over to Captain Duckworth because I can see how enthusiastic you all are about tonight's presentation. I'm not going to click play, so you are just going to see my actual thing because I lose a lot of my screen. So first off, before you even get into anything tonight, again, I just want to give thanks to our premium sponsors for trauma care, which is Slater and Gordon. They have come in recently and really helped us. We're really grateful for them, and you should really check them out because they are not just lawyers. I know lawyers for medical staff are a scary thing, but they actually run a lot of trauma panels. They do a lot of education. They do a lot of everything, and it's definitely worth checking them out over at www.slatergordon.co.uk. As I said, they are lawyers first and foremost, but they have the patient at mind, and also at the same time, they are very trauma focused in that they run a lot of webinars, they run a lot of seminars, all the different things. So definitely check them out, see if they've got any seminars coming up. And I have to do this. I feel like I'm about 10 minutes too late to do this. However, the disclaimer for tonight is that learning that has taken place during this webinar should not be solely relied upon to inform practice, or indeed allow practice outside the individual scope of qualifications. I nearly got that perfect at triple speed then. And breathe. However, this does mean that tonight we are here for education. You can see that we're here for education. We're getting questions asked. We're doing everything already. Please do not take this as you being able to run around and start managing a major incident. This just means that this is for your CPD purposes, for your CME purposes. This is to go into your portfolio. And as you've all already figured out, neither myself nor Captain Duckworth can see you. Please make sure wherever you are comfortable. We might get to it at the end where we might, if people start asking loads of questions and they want to ask in person, I'm going to start flicking cameras on for various participants, but that's completely up to you guys. We've spoken about it, but we want to make sure that you're comfortable doing it. So if you do want cameras on at the end to have that actual conversation with Captain Duckworth, we are going to do it. However, it is completely up to you guys. And of course, the promotional stuff. So you should know by now, hopefully, we are coming to Belfast. We're coming to the iconic Titanic in Belfast as well, the original home place of that ship. We're coming for the Irish Trauma Care Conference. If you do scan the QR code that's on your screen now, you can buy some early bird tickets. They are only on sale for another couple of months. We've got some incredible speakers available for you. We've got Dr. Nigel Ruddle, who's one of the organisers, Dr. Duncan Redmill, another one of the organisers, both absolute clinical leads in their field within Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland. And of course, our keynote speaker, Dr. Phil Cowburn from Nauru. Do scan the QR code that's on your screen now. Come find us at the Titanic Belfast. We've nearly sold out every single one of the trade stands. It's going to be an incredible event. It's a beautiful venue with some incredible speakers on, and you'd be a fool to miss it. But of course, that's not going to take away from the Scottish Trauma Care Conference that we are going to at the Golden Jubilee Hotel. On the 3rd and 4th of November, we are heading up to Glasgow with, and again, such an equally impressive array of speakers. We've got lots of things going on, and the Scottish Trauma Network is pulling together an incredible day for you on the Monday. They're going to be doing this beautiful day where it starts off with a talk from the Scottish Trauma Network before going off into lots of mini talks and practical sessions and all sorts of fun things going on. So do scan the QR code that's on your screen now to check out the Scottish Trauma Network. And before I go any further, and I am skipping slides now because I'm aware of the time, if you want a free CPD certificate for tonight's webinar, scan the QR code that's on your screen right now, and you can become a member of Trauma Care. By doing that, you will get free CPD certificates for as long as you are a member. However, if you are not a member, you will have to pay for your certificate for $199. Being a member of Trauma Care doesn't just come with the advantage of getting your free CPD certificates. It also means that you get massive discounts on top of early bird discounts. It means that you get the free trauma journal sent every single month, every quarter to your doorstep or into your inbox. It means that you get discounts in our shops and all sorts of places, 10% discount on the Medics Lodge. There's all sorts of wonderful things that you get by becoming a member. And as well as that, you help support the charity. Do scan the QR code that's on your screen right now and become a member. As I said, you've got them from like now till about 10 o'clock tomorrow morning to sign up. By that point, you will get a certificate for tonight's webinar for free. A certificate is $199 and a membership is only £3 a month. So there's literally £1 difference. And if you come to a lot of webinars, you're paying more for your certificates than you are for your membership. So it's worth signing up. And with that said, I am going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to pass over to the man of the hour and who we are all here for. Captain Duckworth, whenever you're ready, we're all here to listen to you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate Trauma Care. I appreciate Slater Gordon, our sponsors. I'm happy to go to Dublin if you get someone dropping out at the last minute. If Phil Calburn gets sick, I'm happy to help. One thing I wanted to let everybody know, we're going to move relatively quickly through this program, and there's so many different things that we could talk about. But my parents named me Rommie Duckworth. It's a family name, but if you just Google Rom Duckworth or Rommie Duckworth, I'm the only one that you're going to find. So if you have questions, if you want more information from any of the stuff that we're talking about, you want a copy of this presentation, I'm happy to get it to you. Just Google Rom Duckworth, or you can email me directly, romduck@gmail.com is the easiest one. And I'm more than happy to get you anything that you want. Any of these resources I'm here to share. Our objective for tonight is going to be mission focused. We need to stay mission focused during the initial chaos of a multiple casualty incident through the evolving complexity. When we first get there, there's a lot of chaos and we don't have enough resources, but at some point it winds up flipping and the difficulty becomes that evolving complexity as hopefully a command structure works out, but there are a lot more resources to manage. Because we have a limited amount of time tonight, we're going to focus on the priorities. The priorities that I'm talking about are system agnostic. So whether you're using TST and MIT or whatever system that you're using to manage incident command or manage the multiple casualty incident, these are the priorities that you're going to want to keep in mind as you're using that system. Now, we'll touch on a number of different things, but we're focusing on priorities. And it really all comes back to the man who started it, Napoleon's Surgeon General, Dominique Jean Larrey. And when he initially saw what was going on in the battlefield, he said, we're taking a battlefield where traditionally, if you got stabbed with a sword on the battlefield, it was your problem to take care of, and you were expected to find a doctor and take care of yourself. But now we're using cannons, we're using effectively at the time weapons of mass destruction that were going to be beyond the normal soldier or officer's ability to take care of themselves. So the ambulances at the time were not things that were mobile. They used the term ambulances, but really what they were talking about were field hospitals. And it was still a relatively new idea that Larrey said these field hospitals need to be closer to be useful in the battlefield. And what he saw were the flying artillery. And Napoleon made great use of the flying artillery moving very, very quickly. And he said, well, if they can do that, why can't we have some kind of a flying ambulance to be able to get surgeons out and get people off the battlefield? Making a humongous difference between what previously was 24 to 72 hours. People were still on these huge battlefields, injured, bleeding. And the flying ambulances, if they could be as mobile as the flying artillery, we're going to be able to go out there and bring patients back to those mobile field hospitals. So the question naturally arose, how do we know which patients to pick up first? And he developed the concept of triage, more or less as we know it today. But what I want to focus on is he had it right from the very beginning. Across the world, we tend to use incredibly complicated triage systems. And just like any kind of rescue technique or advanced surgical technique, if you're a specialist and you're doing this all the time, you can probably do it well. But to expect every single clinician who might be first on scene, seeing a multiple casualty incident through the windshield when they arrive, the method of triage has to be simple. And Larray said, look, there's basically only 3 categories that you need to worry about. There's going to be patients who are likely to survive regardless of what they do. They need care, but they're going to survive. Then there are other patients who need immediate care to save a life or limb. And those are the ones that we have to care for first, because that care will make a difference. It doesn't mean that we won't care for the patients likely to survive that still need care. We will get to them. And then there are the patients who are likely to die regardless of our transport or intervention. And they are third down on the list. So with that in mind, sticking to those central concepts, our mission is going to have effectively, in order, 3 priorities. Number 1, stop the killing. Now, if it's a scene of active violence for law enforcement, stop the killing is going to mean to go in and get the active shooter or stop the bad guy, basically. But for us arriving on scene, stop the killing means don't let the patient generator, whatever is generating the patients, make more patients. If it's a motor vehicle collision, maybe the patient generator initially is done. A bus collision, there's the bus already collided. Everybody on board is hurt, but the bus isn't going anywhere else now. But the patient generator stop the killing that we may have to focus on now is traffic control and road safety, wires or other hazards that are in the area. So number 1, when we come in, regardless of the people waving us on, we need to think we need to stop the killing, whatever that may be for the incident in front of us. Then number 2, we have to stop the dying. After we make sure that we're not going to allow any other patients to be generated, we're going to go in there for rapid triage, and I love TST for that, and initial treatment. I hate the fact that the way that we have things set up, we talk about triage as one station and treatment as another. I understand it, and we'll talk about it in that context. But triage and initial rapid treatment must go together. And I know that's one of the questions that we were originally talking. It's one of the reasons I love triage pairs working in pairs if possible, but we'll talk about them when we get to that. Because ultimately our mission, even though first, so that we don't make more patients or ourselves become patients, number 1, stop the killing. Number 2, stop the dying. We're going to get in there. We're going to get patients. Number 3, moving forward. We need to maintain that forward movement of patients because it's going to be the best thing for our most critical patients to get them to the definitive, often surgical interventions that they're going to need. And even for our non-critical patients, moving them off scene is going to allow us, or moving them forward, I should say, is going to allow us the room to maneuver and much less focus of resources on management, where our focus can be on clinical care for the remaining patients that need those critical interventions. Stop the killing, stop the dying, move forward. Now, I've been doing this for more than 30 years, and I have run into more than my fair share of mass casualty training and mass casualty incidents. And there's a lot of things that I wish I knew back then. My first incident was as a volunteer EMT when Hurricane Andrew hit and wiped out pretty much all of South Florida, Miami, the Florida Keys, and everything beyond. It wiped everything flat. And some of the things that I learned at that time was that I needed to be able to identify problems, patients, and partners, those 3 key things to be able to provide care, especially in a widespread incident like this. And also this widespread incident of Hurricane Andrew let me see command, control, and communication struggles. Different agencies trying to work together. It's one of the bigger problems that we have in the US, more so in more consolidated countries like the UK, where there are fewer command, control, and communication issues. But for us, it remains an issue. Now, after a 2-week MCI training course, the fire department I was at in New Fairfield, Connecticut, just a few miles from where I am right now, did a full-scale incident with a plane crash, and we were so practiced that it was amazing that only 2 weeks later, 3 school buses collided, and I wound up being the treatment officer, fully prepared at the time for that incident. What I learned is to apply my training that whatever station I'm placed at, triage, treatment, transport, command, it doesn't matter. I set a mindset of I come into it and I got 3 things. I have to size up what's going on. I have to set up the tools I need to accomplish my assignment, and I must move these patients forward. And how do I do that? Well, I've got to identify those problems, patients, and partners that are going to help me again. And I learned how triage, treatment, and transport integrate together. Now, you tend to do a lot better than we do in the US, but sometimes it is like working on separate islands, as you see here. I understand that. What was most highlighted for me, and the biggest incident that I've ever been on is I was going to be teaching an advanced cardiac life support followed by an EMT course on September 11, 2001. And then I was called in because New York City is only about 30 miles from me that way. And our hospital was asked for resources. So I was picked to bring a team down originally to the base of the Brooklyn Bridge to fly people out. This is a picture that I took of Ground Zero as we were flying down the Hudson. So if you also think of Miracle on the Hudson, Sully Sullenberger, he landed the plane right below where this Black Hawk helicopter is with me in it right now. So we're flying down around, and here you can see we sort of went down around. I didn't take this picture. This is the later picture of Ground Zero. We flew around, and that L-shape helipad that you see right above the 2 in 2001 is where we landed our Blackhawks. And the original idea is we were going to fly the massive number of patients that we expected out to Long Island or to New Jersey to spread the load. Now, this is what we saw when, after waiting and waiting for these patients to arrive, now we know that there weren't going to be as many survivors. This was what we saw. We waited with New York State Office of Emergency Management, and when World Trade Center Building 7 collapsed, they said, we've got to go in. We're not hearing anything from the FDNY command structure. And what we didn't realize at the time was that because the command structure had collapsed when Trade Center 2 collapsed. Here's where we set up right here. You can see at Liberty Plaza, where the NASDAQ stock exchange is. And we were right adjacent to where World Trade Center 2 collapsed. This is us operating in there. What we primarily did, and we don't have time for me to really go into the details, but I'm happy to let people know how we set it up. I came in and we went to report to somebody, and the only person to report to was a New Jersey paramedic. And she said, I'm leaving. And she handed it to me. So I established command in our area and was over the next 16 hours looking for someone else to connect to. And we sort of wound up operating as our own island, not on purpose. We wanted to connect to the command structure, but there was no command structure to connect with. So we set it up. So we had an initial surgical suite immediately on initial triage in the elevator lobby of this building, which you see here. And then we swept people over to be evaluated and rehabbed, and we documented who was where. We had a secondary area where we could provide some additional treatment further out, and a morgue in the back of the building that was relatively isolated, and that we set up as a refrigerated area because I had National Guard and other people coming in, and they asked, who's in charge? And people would point at me. So I stepped up to be, pretend to be the guy who was in charge and coordinate things. And I learned all of these things that we're going to talk about tonight, including number one, maintaining mission focus. Number two, no matter what the size of the incident, you break it down. Whoever's asking you to do something, you size it up, you set it up, and you keep patients moving forward. The information that you need is an assessment of your problems, the hazards and the details, patients and partners that can help. So you can set up command, control, and communication or plug into them if you can find them. And the way that we're going to do it, focusing tonight primarily on triage, treatment, and transport. And every single after action, although they may use different words, 7/7, the Boston Marathon bombing, the London and Westminster bridge attacks, the Paris attacks, the Manchester bombing, the Las Vegas shooting, and more, I see the same priorities over and over again. Now, I want you to follow your local protocols, but I hope that you find it useful to keep in mind whatever level of officer you happen to be arriving, our priorities are always and remain stop the killing. Say it with me, stop the dying and forward movement of patients. Now, there's a lot of command stuff that we could talk about, and I'm a firefighter paramedic where I am. I run a fire-based EMS system here in Connecticut, but we're going to focus primarily on our EMS operations. And when you arrive, whatever role you happen to be, just a transport ambulance, the person put in charge of triage or treatment, or whatever role you take, I want you to picture the scene in terms of these patients flowing, patient flow, just like a river. We might start with one area at this motor vehicle collision that is a pool of patients that we need to move. And we need to set up our triage, our casualty collection point if need be, even if there's hazmat involved, our decon, whatever it happens to be. We know our patients must move forward. So let's picture that river that we want them to flow down. And that's going to help you with the logistics, whether you're somebody who has to set up the whole river initially, or you're someone who has to be a spot on that river where you're taking patients from upstream and moving them downstream, or you're just coming in as part of that river. You could just be a little drop, but we need to picture this river of patients moving, flowing. We want to keep it as straight as we can, but sometimes that river's going to have to take some twists and turns. That's okay. But we don't want anything clogging up the river. We start seeing things blocking things up, we have to unclog it. We have to move it along. And organizationally, we look at how this river is going to flow from the first arriving people, the first arriving units who are going to have to set up, and they're going to see things through the windshield, through triage, treatment, and transport, to ultimately hospital care. And I say hospital care because it may not even be physically at a hospital. You may set up another collection point where the patients are going to receive definitive care. At our first mass casualty with multiple school buses, we put students who were relatively uninjured on another school bus and transported them wholesale to the hospital where the physicians could just check them without even bringing them into the ER and clogging up the ER. In another school bus incident, we had a physician come out to the site and clear patients on site because they didn't want that many patients in an emergency department that wasn't going to be able to handle it. And I know your mileage may vary, but let's start with the first arriving people. All right. You show up, you happen to be in the area and you got the radio call. You may not wear the white helmet and have all of the official decorations, but when you first get there, you know that your priority, whatever the level, number one, stop the killing. Do what you can to stop that killing. All right. I'm not saying if it's not within your capabilities to intercept, someone who's part of a marauding terrorist attack. But I'm saying we make sure that the patient generator isn't making any more patients, even if what you do is identify it and call for resources for someone who is going to be able to secure that patient generator. Then we're going to get ready to stop the dying. The next thing that has to happen, if we can, we might not be the ones to do it, but we may be the ones to assign it, is stop the dying. That triage and that initial treatment, moving patients forward. And that's what our priorities are. So we're first arriving. what's our size up, set up, and move forward? I got to size up. I'm going to use my methane report, right? I'm going to size it up. I'm going to think about the answers to all those questions and make sure that not only everybody has that information, but they are in MCI mode. They're ready to take an assignment instead of a patient, perhaps, when they first arrive. We need to set up command, control, and communication. Now, maybe that is already being set up adjacent to you. That's great. Then you need to connect EMS, first arriving, with command and get your assignments. When I say control, we're going to start blocking things out, and we need to make sure that we're in communication, whether that means the right radio and the right radio channels, or that means a face-to-face report, which can often be much more effective. And then for the first arriving unit, we need to assign and delegate triage, treatment, and transport, or make sure that it is assigned or delegated. Again, if there's already somebody who's going to be able to do that, then we need to do whatever is necessary for us to facilitate that triage, initial treatment in the treatment area, and then transport are set up. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, there's a lot of great training resources on methane. We start by specifically declaring a mass casualty incident. So many times people arrive on scene of a major incident and they presume that people must know it's a mass casualty. You need to declare it, not only so everybody knows it, but mentally it will put them in that MCI mode. Identify as best you can the exact location, and this is important for me personally. In a way, access that we're going to get to is more important, but let them know exactly where you are, what kind of incident it is. It's a marauding terrorist incident. It's an explosion. It's a motor vehicle collision. Whatever information you can provide, initial information is even more important than accuracy. Give them a report. We can revise it as we go. The type of incident and the hazards, the access point. Now, this is not only access in, but the way I think of this, and your mileage may vary. You may be taught differently. Follow your local protocol. When I tell people access, I mean the access I want the incoming units to use. I may say, there's a parking lot over there. I may grab a law enforcement officer or a firefighter and say, that's where we're sending our resources. That's where I need people to go. I need you to take some cones and some road flares, law enforcement officer, go over to the entrance of that Mexican restaurant over there, light the road flares, and wave any emergency vehicles that you see in. Because what I don't want is emergency vehicles climbing right up on top of me because they have the exact location and they're bearing down on me so that things are going to get jammed up. If you can, you give that number and type of patients. Again, it's going to be an initial estimate. It will be revised. Do your best, but just answer that question, the rough number and type of patients. If you can give rough numbers of priority, that's fine. But type of patients can also include key patient information. I'm not talking about exact ages, but we have a school incident in a school. We have 5 to 10-year-olds. We have 25 5 to 10-year-olds, mostly ambulatory. We have a bus of geriatric patients. And what resources you need. Call for those initial resources. Now, we aren't as well versed in methane widely in the US, so I use what I told you. I'm identifying pretty much the same thing that you saw in methane. We call it a mass casualty incident and declare it, and then identify your problems, your patients, and your partners that you need to call. And that effectively covers our methane, but it's a little bit easier to digest, I think. Remember that you're going to be working with a lot of other partners that are going to have a lot of other priorities. The law enforcement is going to be thinking about traffic and investigation. Fire rescue is going to be thinking about things like extrication. Incoming EMS providers are going to be focused on their patients, while hospitals and the larger command structure is going to be looking at all patients. Your road safety, your traffic Department of Public Works, whatever you wind up calling it, is interested in the roadway going through. Environmental protection is going to be concerned about hazardous materials. The public media is going to be concerned with public interest. They're going to be showing up and filming, and family members and friends are going to be concerned with their family members and friends. We're going to have to remember that when we're interfacing with any of these people, they have their own priorities, which may not perfectly match ours. And that's why it's so important, even if you normally wouldn't be command and you wouldn't normally initiate command, that we have to make sure that command, control, and communications is established. Someone knows that even if you're going to hand it off, you are command, or whoever command is. They need to know that a structure is being established so that it's can build out from there. We have to have that seed for the command structure to grow to manage the incident. When I say control, I'm talking about specific areas. Now, it's great in a drill if we can put on our vests so we could throw out tarps. And if that works for you, that's great. But that's less of a concern than looking at areas and saying, okay, I have a bus collision here. This bus is partially up against a tree and it's on its side and it may fall over. I need to stop the dying. It's going to take the fire department a while to stabilize this bus, but if I can move patients off the bus, hey, everybody, we're going to an area behind the bus and we're going to set up by that tree. And you may consider moving everybody off of the bus and putting them at a casualty collection point, even briefly, at the tree behind the bus. I'm trying to move quickly and use concrete examples, but we need to control specific areas. The control is the logistics. We're picturing that river of patients and we're trying to make them flow. And again, communications, right radios, right channels, but we may just be doing face-to-face. Excuse me. So we size up. We think our methane, our methane information. We got our command, control, and communication set up so that we can build and we delegate triage, treatment, and transport. So let's do that. Triage. I have to think, what do I need to know to do triage? What's my size up? I need to know how I'm going to get at my patients. What is going on with the patient generator? Is it still making more patients? Am I going to need special safety equipment or someone else to get me in near that patient generator or secure that patient generator so we can stop the killing? And I need to size up, even as I'm approaching starting triage, how I'm going to move through these patients and roughly where are they going to go from here? Now, maybe the safest place for them right now is maybe it's a bus collision and the safest place for them on this roadway is to stay in the bus. That's great. But there's still a pool of patients. And at some point, we need to break that pool so that the patients can start flowing down, right? We need to give that forward movement. So I'm thinking, how am I going to gain patient access? What do we need to do about the patient generator? And even as I'm approaching, how am I going to move these patients out? I need to set up my triage tools, my triage teams, and my destination. Again, that patient pathway. Where am I sending my patients, even if I'm not moving them now? And we need to consider that other French word that goes with triage, portage. We need to think, what about the patients that need extra help moving? Ultimately, triage is about moving forward with that 10-second triage, okay? So we're sizing up, setting up, and moving forward. I've studied lots and lots of different triage methods, and they primarily focus on in-hospital or secondary triage. And what's great about 10-second triage is it gets patients moving forward, moving fast. Walking, bleeding, talking, breathing. I literally taught a 2-hour program today where we practiced exactly this. So 10-second triage, there's a lot of other resources, and I'm happy to teach about it, but it's not my primary language, so to speak. So we'll leave that offline for you to be able to look up the other resources or talk to me, and I will get you more information. Remember that as we're triaging, and we're triaging in those triage teams, right? If possible, in pairs, what I like to do is go, you're making the triage decisions and you are going to be tagging the patients or using the slap bracelets, and any rapid initial treatment. Now, what I like about that is one person is just focused on that rapid assessment and they are keeping things moving forward. Whereas their partner will take another minute to actually tag, slap bracelet, use tape, whatever the method is, to identify the patient priority and guide the patient, but could also provide immediate bleeding control, a tourniquet, have the patient put their hand and provide direct pressure on themselves, whatever it takes. Whatever they wind up doing for the patient with their, the provider with their hands on, they have to keep up with their partner. It becomes a self-correcting problem if you can put people in pairs where one puts their eyes on the patients and the other puts their hands on the patient. If the hands-on partner winds up lagging behind, they will look and see the eyes-on partner putting their eyes on patients way up there. They'll catch up. Or the eyes-on partner will be making triage decisions and notice that their other partner is lagging behind. So yes, that initial treatment can absolutely occur with triage. But eventually we need to move patients downstream to a treatment area. And we need to think there are going to be patients in wheelchairs. There are going to be patients that cannot move themselves. There are going to be patients that are delayed because of extrication. These patients are going to, we're going to have to keep them in mind as we move through. Because we often think, well, we triage so that we could take the red patients first. But many times we're going to get green or yellow patients before those red patients are available for transport. I would definitely want to keep transport resources available for the red patients that we know are going to be coming so they can be rapidly treated and transported, move to definitive care, get the surgical interventions they need. But if I know I've got, say, 2 red patients coming, but I got 4 ambulances in front of me, and I'm looking over and I see multiple yellow and green patients that could be transported, forward movement of patients. Let's keep them moving. It's just a consideration. Again, fit it to the scene in front of you. So treatment officer. All right, now you're going to be sizing up the patients coming in from triage, right? You're getting a report from what is going to be coming downstream because you're thinking about what we were just talking about. You're thinking about portage and how we're going to move those patients. Are you going to move them to a treatment area? Maybe you have a secure treatment area. Maybe it's inside a structure or it's on a secured area of roadway. Maybe you even have those tarps set up. Fantastic. Or maybe you don't, and you're going to need to initially help move the patients to you or set up a brief casualty collection point. Maybe the patient generator isn't under control yet, and we need to move, someone needs to move those patients out of the area of hazard to a casualty collection point that is only going to be briefly safe. And we need to pick up our patients from there and move them to our treatment area. What we don't want is people setting up a treatment area that is disconnected from the flow of patients. You may set up a treatment area and initially help start moving patients into that treatment area. What do we set up? We're sizing up triage and basically where our area is going to be. And we get as treatment the structures, staff, and stuff. We set up our structures if it's as informal as a tarp on a roadway, or if it's as formal as we're going to put all of the green patients on the priority 3 patients on that bus right there, or in this building for right now. We're going to move them into this room. Incoming units will bring you staff, personnel, and stuff. The treatment officer will be deploying that stuff. So you have to set up your structures and the staff and stuff that come in so that you can move patients forward. 10-second triage is not meant to be the definitive triage, but maybe you can move patients forward so quickly that they don't stay in your treatment area for long. Fantastic. That's the key. We need to move patients forward, not stop the flow of patients so that we can provide treatment. And I can tell you, clinicians love to stop where they are and provide treatment. So it winds up being a little bit of a battle sometimes. And that's where MIT comes in as well. We've got the major incident triage tool to re-triage as we need to. If patients do cool for a little while in that treatment area, we can re-triage them there. But the focus is re-triaging and moving through treatment to transport. So finally, we have our transport officer. And ultimately, in a way, the most complicated situation or the most complicated position is the most simple to describe. And this can really vary depending on whether you're doing gold, silver, or bronze command structure. The incident command structure for in the United States, or again, your mileage may vary. Whatever your command structure, it may separate the person who's with the ambulances with someone who is in a purely communications role, but they still work together. In the US, the way I teach it, primarily it's the transport section. And the transport officer supervises the communications and all of that to just do one thing: connect patients with ambulances and send them to the appropriate destinations. And that's what you're doing. I got to size up what patients can come next, not what patients overall. I mean, yeah, I want to know that, but I'm looking to treatment to see what patients are available to get out of here next, what ambulances I have available that are appropriate to take them, and what destinations are ready to receive them. And I set up the flow for the patients to come in, the flow for the ambulances to come in and take those patients on board, and the flow out to those destinations. And that's what I do. I connect my patients with help to ambulances off to destinations. That's what we're talking about. First arriving, initial triage and treatment, setting up that treatment area for a temporary collection point, and transporting these patients out. Because when the patients have moved downstream, and I want us all to be able to picture that flow of patients, the smoothest, most beautiful, gentle, bubbling stream of patients that just moves them along gently, but efficiently to their destination hospital. I've been treating this for a long time. I've been doing this for a long time. And you would think after September 11th, I'm done, right? What else could happen? Only a year later, this is a video I took when I was interfacing with the FBI and several other agencies in Danbury, Connecticut as the lead EMS personnel, the lead healthcare personnel at an anthrax incident that we had. And of course, only a few miles away from here, we had our Sandy Hook school shooting. Sandy Hook, I used to live in Newtown. If it can happen there, it can happen anywhere. And I hate to say it that way, but the point is you have to be ready with those priorities. One of the things that I do to show the flow, and I find it even more useful than full-scale scenarios, which are great, but I love tabletop scenarios. And these are all right behind me, where I have little envelopes with ambulances, and I stock them with little cards with the resources that would really be on those ambulances. You got an ambulance with double paramedic. We put 2 paramedic cards in there and a card with ALS gear. You got a crashed school bus with 25 injured children and 3 adults. I put little cards in there with those injuries. And we see as we move through first arriving, command structure, control, communications, we practice it, and we see the flow of the patients as we have the flow of providers to the destination hospitals. That's how we do it. And whatever you do, whatever position you're assigned, even if it's triage, treatment, transport, and you want to be not only competent, but confident, you size up your job, you set up your resources, and you move forward so we can stop the killing, stop the dying, move these patients forward, and have the best outcome for them. So I want to thank you for our time. I know that we're rubbing up against the very edge there, but I want to be able to answer those questions, and I want to give you the contact for anybody who's got to go but wants more information. Otherwise, I'm happy to stay on as long as you'll have me, and give you any information, any insight that I can share from my experiences or from the experiences of others that I've benefited from their wisdom.
Yeah. I don't know about everyone else. I'm personally absolutely speechless after that. Ron, wow. I, wow. Such a powerful, fantastic talk. I can see why Linda was singing the praises. It's an incredible talk. So as Ron said, like right at the beginning, there's only Rommie Duckworth, which sounds like a football chant. Don't mean to turn it back to that, but if you do want to get in contact, please do email Rommie at romduck@gmail.com. I know some people have asked in the chat how to get in contact. That is how. Go onto his website. Obviously, we can all see from tonight the wealth of experience, the wealth of knowledge, just endless, absolutely fantastic. I'm going to be a little bit rude now, though, Ron. I do apologize. I'm going to stop sharing your screen in just a second, and I'm just going to pop ours up because very on theme, actually, very on theme. So tonight we've spoken about, obviously, we've touched on the anthrax, we've touched on Sandy Hook, we've touched on 9/11 big style. Next time for our next webinar, we've got Professor John Drury joining us, who's going to be talking about the social cure during and after emergencies, major incidents and disasters. So our next webinar, which is taking place on July the 4th at 8 o'clock at night, so another Thursday, another 8 o'clock meeting, we're going to be talking about the Manchester bombing, and we're going to be talking about what happened that night and how, as a first responder, John responded to that. Now, for me, that's very close to my heart because I lived around the corner. I literally around the corner from when it happened. So please do join us for that presentation. I'm sure it's going to be as hard-hitting and as prevalent as tonight's was. Rommie, cannot thank you enough. That was probably one of, if not the best presentation we've ever had. So everyone that's with us tonight, I know a couple of people have dropped off, but for everyone that's with us tonight, if you are not a member of Trauma Care, this is your chance to get your CPD certificate for tonight's presentation. If you scan the QR code that's on your screen right now, it will take you through to a type form. All you need to do is fill that out and you will get your certificate for tonight's presentation. The certificate is translatable across countries as well. So I'm very aware that CPDs are very British, UK, Scotland kind of thing, but it can translate across to everything. So you can translate those points that you get from tonight to your own country. So do scan the QR code that's on your screen right now and you can purchase your CPD certificate, but only if you're a non-member of Trauma Care. If you are a member of Trauma Care, even if you sign up between now and God knows what time I'll actually manage to figure out how to get the certificate sent tomorrow, even if you sign up afterwards, we did it last week. If you sign up afterwards, I sent the certificates free anyway and refunded. So don't worry. If you sign up between now and sort of the end of tomorrow, I'll get your certificate out for you. And this is the Q&A section, Rom. I hope you are ready because we have got 13 questions to go through. Some have kind of been answered throughout the presentation. I can see you typing the answer to Helen now, so I'll leave you to type that if you want to.
No, I'll be happy to answer them live. I could probably do it faster than I could type it.
No worries. No worries. So yeah, so we do have a lot of questions to go through. So, and I'm on no time limit. I'm sure that you guys are all very eager to hear more from Rommie as well. So Helen Howells asked, and this was before the presentation in the pre-Q&A section, can I ask your thoughts on pre-hospital hands-free CPR? Try that again. Can I ask your thoughts on pre-hospital hands-free CPR technology? Is it a huge benefit in transit after major trauma in order to transit?
Well, I'm going to start by saying, giving you a caveat for any of the answers to these questions, for any of these questions. If if I may misunderstand either the context in which you're working or the way that you're asking the question, and maybe I'm answering something that's only adjacent to what you were trying to find out, then again, please contact me directly and I'd be more than happy to get to the specifics so that we get a little more back and forth and I understand you better. In this case, I'm going to look at it as you're talking about mechanical CPR devices, hands-free CPR technology. I'm assuming that's mechanical CPR devices. But it comes down to the fact that I am a fan of those tools under the right circumstances, under circumstances primarily medical cardiac arrests, where it's going to be difficult to provide continuous, effective manual CPR, such as a transition downstairs or a prolonged extrication or something like that. That's really what the research is showing us, that it's not inherently better. The machines are not inherently better than manual CPR. Basically, what I teach people is hands on chest saves lives. Now, that being said, when we're talking about mass casualty incidents, we're usually referring to incidents of trauma. And there is a lot of discussion within this esteemed group that I'm working with, and believe me, I'm the token paramedic on this group. These are all research physicians who know this stuff inside and out. But what I'm learning from them and what I'm participating in the discussions, we're seeing that there's questions about the efficacy of CPR in trauma. And I'll say it with this: it's all about priorities. For me, when we're being practical, we can go a lot of different ways, but what is our priority? So sometimes the priority is going to be stop the bleed before cardiac compressions. Now, that's as far as I can answer that question right now, because I'm literally going to be spending the next year to 18 months participating in critical reviews with the American Heart Association, College of Surgeons, and the like, evaluating the current level of research on exactly this. So hopefully in 18 short months, I'll have a better answer for you, but the initial is looking like it probably wouldn't be, it may be beneficial theoretically to use mechanical CPR to free up hands, but you have to look at your priority as probably stop the bleed first.
Well, talking of stop the bleed, so fantastic lead on there. Thank you very much. Wendy Vassallo, and good to see you again, Wendy, has actually asked, Stop the Bleed campaign is now becoming more popular. Have you seen any changes already in major incidents in the US? So
I've definitely seen more preparation for major incidents in the US. And it's unfortunate that, you know, we have to make the statement that, you know, there's just a lot more shootings here than virtually anywhere else. And so that kind of trauma, in which a tourniquet would be useful for extremity bleeding control, is especially important. And seeing these kinds of kits with almost the same level of availability in some places as AEDs, defibrillators, and even fire extinguishers, is wonderful, just because it's that level of preparation. So the Stop the Bleed campaign for the public, and especially school children, I've got a 9-year-old. He's downstairs right now. It's terrible for me to have to say that that's even a thing, that school children in the US should have to know it without even making a political statement. It's just, anybody could agree it's sad. But if they have to know it, I'm glad that they have it. As far as interventions, certainly there are a lot more public interventions, I believe, as I understand it, due to Stop the Bleed campaign preparation for training and for having that equipment available, just like someone may be trained in CPR and have a pocket mask available or a pocket barrier available. People are now carrying tourniquets and other Stop the Bleed equipment. So in that case, definitely. If you want more specific data, as part of the aforementioned project, I'm connected with the guy who runs the Stop the Bleed campaign in the US. So if you want data, Jim Dodd is going to be the one to have it. So reach out to me if you want specific numbers, and I'll get it from Jim Dodd.
yeah, and onto that note as well, obviously the Stop the Bleed is a big part of trauma care's campaigns as well, because we're very good friends with Citizen Aid, so we do know Jim quite well as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So our people might not know this, but our own Keith Borse, who founded Trauma Care, also was the founder of Citizen Aid, who were pioneers in the Stop the Bleed campaign. So we do know all of those guys. So yeah, so same. I mean, get in contact with Rommie first in terms of Stop the Bleed to know about that side of stuff, and to get in touch with Jim Dodd. But yeah, we're good friends with Jim as well. So absolutely, it's all coming full circle, and we love to see it.
We're all a community.
That's the point. That's the point. So Ellie Mae French has asked, and I know you kind of touched upon this first, but I feel like there might be an elaboration here that you might want to go into. If first on scene, how do I know who to go for first? I've been taught 10-second triage, but I'm unsure whether I treat critically ill patients while I'm with them and triaging, or just tag them and move on. So I know, and move on until other resources. So I know he talks about the tagging, he talks about the resources available, but maybe it's something you can delve into just specifically to answer that side of stuff of who do they go for first.
Okay. So when you're going to be first arriving, again, initiate or connect with whatever command structure is appropriate for where you work. You're going to need to do that first, and possibly delegate triage. But so I have to say that first. But we'll take it as you come in and you are asked to, say, assist with triage. So we could sort of jump to that, right? You're the first person who's going to be actually making patient contact to be triaging. You have to be systematic. Look at that patient flow. See if you can get an idea of the patient pool. Where are the patients collected that you are going to have to triage? And they may be scattered, even in a widespread motor vehicle collision or something broader. Look at the scene and decide the systematic starting point. I'm going to start here, and we're going to work in a straight line or go around clockwise or anti-clockwise, whatever is appropriate. So it's less running up to the worst looking hurt person that you see is more important in being systematic, because 10-second triage is so practical that if the patients are not that hurt, right? If they're low priority green patients, you're going to triage them. They're not going to need care. You're going to move quickly to those more critically ill patients quickly anyway. So it's more important to be systematic so we get control of the scene than to run around from spot to spot. In addition, yes, you'll absolutely be treating those patients as you make contact. Now, we can go down a lot of what ifs, and if you've got specific ones, again, contact me. But the easiest example that I can give you is hopefully working in a team where we're continually moving forward. And even if you're working as an individual, it's triage and then a thing that you can do, an intervention that you can provide rapidly and still move on. Now, I forget off the top of my head if the UK or certain ambulance trusts or systems of care have certain restrictions on exactly what can and can't be done. In the US, for the most part, it's whatever is appropriate that you can do that will not require you to stay with the patient. So for us, if it's open an airway, if it's put a tourniquet on, if it's have a patient or a bystander assist with direct pressure, if it's decompress a chest, because you can do that and move on if necessary, if it's provide a nerve antidote kit, auto injector, even things as sort of complex and not universally available as that, you hit it and you move on. So absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you. This is quite a nice question from a student perspective, talking about what would you recommend as a student that would help them? So this is anonymous attendee. What would you recommend the student to help them with wider knowledge surrounding major trauma? They have little experience. They just want to know what would you recommend?
Honestly, become a member of Trauma Care and keep attending programs like this. One of the reasons I love when I got to present in person at Trauma Care, one of the things that really excited me about the program was how well it tied everyone together and how practical it was. There are a lot of online resources, but yeah, programs like this and getting that wider perspective on your priorities. Again, I think it could be easy to get overwhelmed. I've been doing this for a long time, and at 3 o'clock in the morning on a dark and stormy night, when I show up, I can have a hard time wrapping my head around a major trauma incident. So I would say if you need to, take a breath and focus on what the next step is that you have to do. That's in terms of major trauma on a specific incident. This is the next, I can only do one thing at a time. I'm going to pick my priority, and I'm going to do that thing next. And when I'm done doing that thing, I can move on to the next thing. But in a broader sense, in expanding your abilities, knowledge, and skills, webinars like this and anything that you can digest.
Yeah, and I completely agree. There's so many fantastic, obviously we're very niche in that we focus on trauma. So you're talking about surrounding major trauma, that's what we focus on. If you want practical courses, I'd highly recommend checking out ATAC as well. So they do practical courses. We're very much presentation based. We're very much like Rommie is doing tonight. So thankfully, talking about the actual sort of scenarios and that and case studies kind of stuff. But yeah, if you want practical experience, check out Icarus, check out ATAC and those different courses as well. So there's plenty out there. Use your Google. And April, oh, hello again, April. Lovely to see you. So quite an interesting question. Again, this is pre-presentation. So why does communicate fail when you look at major incidents and how can we improve? So I think I'd use this as a global question. How can everyone improve, no matter what your state is in?
We'll set aside the technical issues of communication, radio channels, and things like that. There's a lot of details in that, especially if you read, I believe it's the, now I forget off the top of my head the section in the Manchester report, but it's really well laid out there, but there are a lot of reports there that delve into that. But I would say when you practice tabletop incidents, little short triage, be as specific as possible. Make people be as specific as possible. So when you present them with an example scenario, for me, we have classic American yellow school buses, and that's everywhere in the US. So I'm always using that as an example. And I give them an example of a crashed school bus. And then when I'm asking somebody, okay, well, you are the triage team. How do you, what are you going to report? Oh, well, I would report the number of students on the bus. No, specifically, there's the bus. You're looking in, you see some people, and I show them a photograph. So do it. And they're very hesitant to do it. You need to get people to be specific. So many times people arrive on scene and they assume that other people can see or understand the details that are crucial in communication that aren't communicated. Like, well, it's clear it's a major incident, so people must be sending ambulances directly to where we can connect them with patients. Well, no one has specifically said that. So those ambulances are on standby, but not where we need them to connect with patients. So anytime we practice, anytime we're even just doing a tabletop scenario or just a talk around like this, practice being as specific as possible in your communications. It doesn't have to be a verbal vomit of everything that you see. The more you practice with the specifics, the more you will be, again, competent and confident in giving the kind of reports that are going to provide the key information to connect everybody together. With that being said, face-to-face communications, when you can, tend to be far better than virtually any radio communication. So if that is an option, it takes the whole technical side out of it, and two people standing together making eye contact sort of shuts out all of the distractions around us. And that's why when we're talking about handover reports, that's why that's the way that we do it, that they're required to be face-to-face reports if at all possible, because that's the best form of communication that we're going to have.
It's, again, brilliant answer. Thank you so much. So yeah, and this is quite a simple question, but I feel like you'll be able to answer it quite succinctly. So obviously we spoke a lot tonight about methane, and you mentioned, so Franz has asked, you mentioned a lot of resources available on methane. Please clarify where these resources are. So where do you find these resources about methane? Again, I feel like this is an answer. It's just going to be do your research kind of thing, but without sounding so harsh.
Yeah, it really is. It's a Google away to get you started on methane, 10-second triage, and MIT. I think they're an excellent framework, and I'm working on getting adapted versions of them adopted for us here, at least in my region and in the state of Connecticut. I think we'd have to adapt them a little bit to fit our command structure, but they are, again, very practical. And so many resources are just a Google away. If you feel like you're not finding anything, I know I'm a Google away. So again, reach out to me. I know Trauma Care I'm sure can connect you with some other additional resources. And again, yeah, they're UK specific, but if that's not the system you're working in, you can adapt them pretty well. And I say that as someone who's working on that here in the US.
Yeah, and we literally are a Google away. So on our YouTube, we have had to restrict the number of free resources that are going on just because it was all getting very cluttered and messy. However, I've made sure to keep up the most sort of relevant and popular videos on YouTube. And our most popular video, because it's prevalent for where it is most popular, has got over 20,000 views now. And literally, it's just because there is a singular bit in that section where it just tells you how exactly to deal with it. I would say for me personally, those resources, they are a Google away. They're also a YouTube away. So you look at it and it will, if you Google the right thing, it will pop you up a video that will jump you to the right section. And if you, again, citizen aid, I know it's a citizen-based app and it's looking at kind of the citizen side of stuff and what can citizens do for each other, but they've got a lot of free videos on their front page of the app where you can literally click on it and it'll tell you exactly how to do the thing that you're looking for. So yeah, no, I completely agree, Rommie. Basically, it's all a Google away. And obviously, being in the medical industry, we ask more intricate questions, but the answers are always available. So, Mark, no, sorry, I'm going to move on to, because Oslam, you asked this in the chat and I did manage to catch it. So I hope you're still with us, but I can see you're still blue, so I hope so. They've said, thank you very much for your great experience. On the scene, child triage, treatment and transport should be done by specialised trauma. I'm going to say this again. Sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses. Thank you very much for your great experience. On the scene, child triage, treatment and transport should be done by specialised teams during the mass casualties. What do you think of that?
It's a challenging question to answer. I would say, if I have to only give you a yes or no, then the answer is a no with a big asterisk, because I don't want to leave you with the impression that children have to be triaged with inherently a special method or only by specialist personnel. Now, anytime you have specialist personnel in a situation that they are trained, equipped, and ready to focus their specialist skills on, absolutely use those resources. If they may be available, call for those resources. But I don't want to give you an answer of yes, they should be, and let anybody interpret that as, oh, if I'm not the specialist, then I don't want to do the wrong thing for these children, so I'm not going to use 10-second triage or the other stuff that we have. The part of the practical beauty of all the stuff that we've been talking about is it remains effective even for younger children. So keep them moving forward. And when we can get those specialist resources on scene, then yes, certainly let them help, connect with them, and plug them into your system.
Yeah, and if you want any more sort of resource or answer on that as well, literally the webinar we held 2 weeks ago with James was all about this exact scenario of how do you treat children in the mass casualty incident scenario. So do check that out as well for a more in-depth answer if you want to sort of look at that side of stuff as well. It's the Kid Confident Journey. So Ian Scrim has asked, what more could or should be done to prepare the general public on how to prepare and perform if caught up in a serious or major incident?
Well, I know that there are various citizen groups that are different from country to country. I think, first of all, the Stop the Bleed campaign is fantastic. Giving people again, I know I keep coming back to the same thing, but I think it's that crucial, and that's why I keep mentioning it. The competence and the confidence, both you train them, you make the equipment available, and you let them practice, or you connect them with that the training and the equipment to the point where they are confident, and regular citizens will jump in to help. whether they're part of an organized group or not. They're in Manchester. They were key in evacuating personnel in the bombing, and I could say the same thing happened from my own experience from moderate motor vehicle collisions to September 11th. I mean, like I can only say I've seen it again and again in my personal experience. I read about it over and over again. People want to help. So you start by making it a campaign that can help grassroots individuals be more comfortable with Stop the Bleed and things like that. If you can connect them and help them help organized groups grow for just citizen assistance, that's fantastic. That's even better, although a little bit more of a challenge. But really just getting people involved and reaching out there. And if you're talking about on the scene, here I am. I've got the people that are just around me. Don't be afraid to use citizens. They want to help.
Perfect. And for the final question of the night, and this is the last one, guys, I'm very sorry if you have anything else that want to be answered, but we are running out of time. So Helen Hamill, again, thank you, Helen. You've been such a active participant in tonight's chat. We do really appreciate it. They've asked, if we live 45 minutes away from the only HEMS, which doesn't lift off immediately after the 999 call, what configuration of first response would be safe? So basically, if you're not near an air helicopter, what should you do?
I'm not sure. Maybe you could help me better understand. We're presuming that we need the helicopter. This may be a translation across the pond that maybe I'm missing.
I think so, yes. So for us, HEMS is the air helicopter, and basically they go to rural responses. So say you happen to be in a rural area where your air helicopter isn't getting to you for some time, and they've not lifted off immediately after you've called 911. What would you do?
Okay, now I have a better understanding. All right, and again, thanks to Linda Dykes, who has helped me better understand that the HEMS response in the UK. Thank you for that. It will. This really depends on that initial methane report and just the size up, the initial size up, and calling for those resources as rapidly as possible. It's a challenge, and honestly, it's outside of my expertise to be able to describe how to improve a HEMS dispatch protocol that would get them in the air earlier based on just initial reports before we have other responders on scene. So for me, I would say, even if it's a rural area, as soon as we can get a responder on scene who can call for specific HEMS resources or mention a specific trigger, like, hey, it's a methane report and they're declaring a mass casualty incident, so we're spinning up HEMS resources because this is a rural area, and they're going to be ready to move into that area unless otherwise stood down. But I'm happy to take any expertise that anybody else has, because I feel like this is more UK specific, and our HEMS operations are a little bit different, even depending on what part of the US that you're in.
No, that is completely fair. So I am very sorry, friend, and you're on a very UK specific question, but I thought give you both the chance just to see what your thoughts on it was.
Sure.
And what Helen, if she could get something out of that. That is all there is for us to say tonight. So I don't know if Captain Duckworth, you had anything that you wanted to add on or anything that you wanted to say to close this out for yourself.
Only thank you very much for the opportunity. I love getting a chance to connect with responders on stuff like this. I did training, this training for my own department, my own agency earlier today. We're rolling it out regionally. But whether it's this or anything else, I just love to connect with you. So thank you very much. If you got something to share or something to ask, you know how to get a hold of me, romduck@gmail.com, or just Google Rommie Duckworth, and I'll be happy to hear from you. Thank you again. Stay safe.
No. No, thank you so much. I can't even express, Ram, just thank you so much for tonight. Someone's just said one of the very best sessions I've attended. I can completely agree. I've been doing trauma care sessions for 2.5 years now, and this is this is up there, if not the best one that I've ever had to run. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm sure once we get this out online, it's going to be a huge hit. So thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your knowledge. As always, everyone that has joined us tonight, wherever you are in the world, I know we've had a lot of people from Ireland, from all over, from South Africa again, from New Zealand again. Wherever you are in the world, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, make sure that you keep yourself safe. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you to all our sponsors, QualSafe, Galen, Icarus, and of course, Slater and Gordon for allowing us to do what we do. Thank you, Rommie, for joining us. Wherever you are in the world, stay safe and good night.